When practicing challenging yoga poses, sometimes it's not a physical issue that's holding us back. We might have the flexibility necessary to do the pose, we might have the strength necessary to do the pose, but mentally our mind is holding us back. Using the yoga philosophy to get the mind in the game, to build your mental strength can be really helpful. My name is Christina and I'm really excited to share with you some yoga philosophy that you can use to build up your mental strength when doing challenging poses. One thing that we talk about in the 8 limbs of yoga, one of our niyamas, is tapas. And tapas translates to a few different things: discipline, burning enthusiasm, fire. Tapas is the discipline mentally to continue to work on something, to continue to show up for ourselves. When we use our tapas, when we continually work on anything, we're able to build our concentration and our ability. Practice, right? If we practice something, we get better. Tapas is the discipline, the mental discipline that allows us to keep practicing. Using tapas when you're working towards crow pose or any other challenging pose can be really helpful. And as you build that mental discipline, you'll start to experience more stillness, more concentration, more mental focus. And when we do that from a regular practice, this allows us to be fully present with the pose just as it is, without expectation of what we think it should be, without comparing it to other people around us, without that mental chatter of you should be able to, why can't you, all of that fun stuff. When we can just be present with the pose from consistently showing up for ourselves, we can find that stillness. The other thing that tapas, this mental discipline, helps us with is when we are consistent, when we do something over and over, we start to recognize that everything changes. There's this flow. One day I can do crow pose, the next day I fall on my face. And that's just the way the world works, right? Life is not linear. Life goes like this. Same with trying to do any pose. You go up, down, left, right, up, down, left, right. You're all over the place. That happens with crow pose as well. So this mental discipline, showing up for yourself, you start to recognize everything's in flux, everything's changing, and then I can just be present with what's happening and what is. Which leads me to my next point to help you mentally do a challenging pose. The next point is non-attachment. Yoga philosophy talks about this so much in a lot of the ancient texts. Non-attachment. And this is often misunderstood. It's often thought as detachment. And it's not detachment. Non-attachment is actually realizing that everything changes. Everything's in this constant flux. Nothing is permanent. Your crow pose is not permanent. You might have it today, but you don't have it next week. Or maybe you had it a couple years ago, but you don't have it today. Non-attachment is recognizing that everything changes. And if I'm aware of that, I can accept that fact and be okay with it as it is today, without expectation or my happiness wrapped up in how this comes to fruition. So I can be like, yeah, I'm happy. I have my crow pose today. Yeah, I'm happy. I fell on my face today. I'm okay. I'm content with whatever is. We can learn to accept the state of our body and our mind exactly as they are, which is really very freeing. It also helps us to be more present, because when I realize that this is going to change, I can be more present with the experience. I can really explore crow pose and be like, this is fun, because it's going to be different tomorrow. And it can be new and fresh every time you do it. Through this acceptance of what is, we achieve a greater sense of physical and mental stability. Another way to say that, we experience more peace. I'm okay. This is what it is. Another wonderful quality from yoga philosophy that I love is lila. So lila is Sanskrit for cosmic play. Cosmic play. We are in this beautiful, amazing body for this wonderful, wonderful life. And we are meant to enjoy it. And so when we're playing with something like that, bring this cosmic curiosity to it. Come at it from a place of, I don't know what's going to happen today. Let's see. Let's try this. Let's see what these arms can do today. Instead of this heaviness of I've got to accomplish something and do something, I have to do this to be a good person, I can play with curiosity like a young child. And lila is cosmic play. And what's meant by that is it has a spiritual side to it. This side of, I'm here in this body for now, and this is awesome. And this spiritual side of connecting to spirit or universe and the joy that comes from that. Lila, a great aspect to help us with our challenging poses. And a couple of other things. When we're working on a challenging pose, we want to notice what thoughts come up. Because really that's the point of doing a challenging pose, is to notice our thought patterns. What do I naturally default to? Do I default to, you can't do this? Do I default to, I'm not as good as that person over there? Do I default to, I'm amazing? Do I default to, I have to work harder, I have to work harder? What is your thought process around it? Doing the hard pose is really an opportunity to bring those thoughts to the forefront so I can see them, recognize them. And if they're healthy, I might want to perpetuate them. If they're unhealthy, then I want to release them. And that's going to bring me to my last point that is really helpful. Yoga philosophy talks about this practice called Pratipaksha Bhavanam. And this is the practice of observing those thoughts, seeing what's coming up. And when there's a thought that isn't helpful, when there's a thought that you could label it as negative if you'd like, but a thought that isn't helpful, isn't healing, a thought that is selfish, what we can do is this practice of Patipaksha Bhavanam, and that's to think the exact opposite thought. It neutralizes the thought, and this is scientifically proven as well. When I think a thought like, I can't do this pose, you think exactly the opposite. I can do this pose. When I think I'm weak, we think I'm strong. This will physically change the gray matter in your mind to build a new mental pathway. We want to think that new thought, that opposite thought, as quickly as we can. The sooner we do it, the easier it is. Because as we continue down that same line of thought, the unhelpful thought, we're getting hormones released into our body with every thought. And as those hormones build up, as we get more adrenaline or cortisol with this unhealthy, unhelpful thought, it gets harder to change it. So once you have that thought, we want to try to recognize it and then change it right away. Pratipaksha Bhavanam. Try that when you're doing a hard pose. Notice the thoughts that come up and then try to think exactly the opposite if the thought is not helpful.